Under the grand chandeliers of the Metropolitan Art Museum, the crowd moved like a tide of shimmering silk and glittering jewels. The evening was a celebration of art, ambition, and carefully crafted appearances. Among the elegantly dressed guests stood Evelyn Hart, a woman whose quiet grace often went unnoticed amidst the city's brightest socialites. Her soft brown eyes reflected a mix of hope and weariness. A woman used to being seen but rarely understood, Evelyn's story was one of resilience, forged quietly in the shadow of a marriage that had once promised everything. Her husband, Daniel Cross, was a man whose charm opened doors and whose name echoed in the boardrooms of the city. Tonight, he was the center of attention, basking in the glow of admiration. Evelyn had arranged the entire event, from the exquisite curation to the delicate floral arrangements, but no one saw her role. To the world, she was simply Daniel's wife. As the night wore on, the soft notes of the piano drifted through the air, weaving around conversations and laughter. Evelyn stood near the edge of the grand hall, holding a glass of champagne, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. She watched Daniel with a practiced smile, but inside, her heart clenched. She sensed a storm gathering, one that would shatter the fragile illusion she had maintained for so long. The moment came without warning. Daniel stepped onto the stage, his voice smooth and confident, thanking the guests for their generosity. Then, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, he paused, glanced at the crowd, and said, "There is something personal I must share before the evening ends." The room hushed. A collective breath held in suspense. "Marina," Daniel said, turning toward a young woman who moved forward like a ray of light. Marina Ellis was Daniel's assistant, elegant and radiant, the kind of woman who seemed to belong to a different world. The crowd watched as Daniel knelt before her and offered a ring. "Will you marry me?" The silence that followed was sharp and heavy. Evelyn's grip on her glass loosened, and it slipped to the floor, shattering like her heart. The red liquid spread across the marble like a stain that would not fade. Cameras flashed, capturing every flicker of shock on her face. She felt every eye in the room burn into her skin. But instead of collapsing, Evelyn lifted her chin and spoke softly but clearly. "You have shown us all who you really are, Daniel." Without another word, she turned and walked out, her steps steady despite the storm raging inside her. Outside, the cool night air wrapped around her, washing away the heat of humiliation. The rain began to fall, gentle at first, then with increasing insistence. Beneath the street lamp, a figure watched her departure. Lucas read, a man whose presence was quiet but undeniable. Lucas had come to the gala reluctantly, a successful but reclusive entrepreneur who valued privacy above all else. Something about Evelyn's composed defiance struck a chord deep within him. As the crowd inside whispered and speculated, Lucas stepped into the rain. Following her with eyes that saw beyond the surface, Evelyn didn't notice him, but she felt the weight of the night lift slightly as she reached the car waiting to take her away. She didn't ask for an umbrella or a kind word. She only wanted to disappear into the storm and find herself again. Little did she know, this was not the end, but the beginning of a new story, one where her brokenness might be seen as beauty and strength. The city lights blurred outside the window of Elise's modest apartment as the rain tapped a soft rhythm against the glass. The night had swallowed the chaos of the gala, but inside her, the storm raged on. She traced the edge of a worn notebook on the table, filled with sketches and half-formed ideas she had once dreamed of bringing to life, dreams that felt so far away now, after everything that had happened. Elise's phone buzzed softly, a message from an unknown number. She hesitated before opening it. "I saw what happened tonight. You didn't deserve that. If you want, meet me tomorrow at the Greenhouse Cafe, Shilbem." No name, no signature. Just a simple invitation, curiosity mixed with caution. She had spent so long living in a world defined by appearances, expectations, and the silent weight of compromise. Maybe this stranger was just another fleeting momentan echo of a night she wished she could forget. Morning came quietly. The cafe was a small sanctuary of greenery and sunlight, the air fragrant with fresh coffee and blooming jasmine. Elise arrived early, clutching her notebook close like a shield. She sat by a window, watching the door, heart pounding with a strange hope. When he walked in, she barely recognized the man from the shadow she'd glimpsed at the gala. Tall, with sharp eyes that held no pity, but something deeper understanding. His name was Julian Marks, an entrepreneur known for his discreet philanthropy and a reputation for seeing potential where others saw failure. He didn't waste time with small talk. "You handled yourself better than most would," he said, voice calm but steady. "I know what it's like to have the world expect you to be something you're not, and to be judged when you break from that." Elise felt a lump in her throat. She wanted to ask why he cared, but something in his presence made the question unnecessary. Julian leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "You have talent," he continued, "but more than that, you have fire. I see it in the way you carry yourself, even when the world tries to dim your light." She looked down at her notebook. "I used to think those dreams were foolish. Maybe I'm too late." Julian shook his head. "It's never too late. People think success is about fitting into a mold, but real success is about breaking the mold and building something new. I want to help you do that. No strings, no expectations, just support." Elise felt a warmth she hadn't known in years, not just from his words, but from the promise behind them. She wasn't alone anymore. Over the following weeks, their meetings became a quiet ritual. Julian didn't push or rush her. He listened as she talked about the designs she'd buried beneath years of silence. He encouraged her to take small steps, redesign a room, create a garden, rebuild a space, not just for beauty, but for healing. Every project was a step forward, a patch on the broken parts of her heart. One evening, after a long day of work, Elise sat in the garden she had helped design at a local community center. The space was a mosaic of flowers, light, and laughter, children running through open paths, elderly couples resting on benches. It was alive, and so was she. Julian stood beside her, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. "You've built more than gardens and rooms," he said quietly. "You've built hope. For yourself and for others." Her eyes brimmed with tears, but they weren't tears of sorrow. They were the kind that fell when wounds begin to heal. But beneath the surface, old fears still lingered. Doubts whispered in the quiet moments. Would she ever truly be free from the shadows of her past? Could she find the strength to claim a new life? One where she was more than just a name linked to betrayal? Julian seemed to sense the storm inside her. "The past is a weight," he said one night, "but it doesn't have to be a chain. You can carry it with grace, or you can let it go and fly." Elise wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that she was more than the broken pieces left behind by a cruel twist of fate. And slowly she started to imagine a future not shaped by others, but by her own hands. The city outside continued its restless hum, but inside Elise's heart, a new song began to play. A melody of courage, resilience, and quiet determination. Change is never easy. It's messy, unpredictable, and often frightening. But Elise had discovered something vital within every ending. There is a beginning waiting to be born. The mornings were no longer filled with dread, but with a spark of possibility. She woke with purpose, her hands eager to create, to build, to shape. Each line drawn in her sketchbook was a promise, a declaration that she would not be defined by what had happened to her, but by what she chose to become. Elise's transformation was not just physical, but deeply emotional. The woman who once moved through life like a shadow was now stepping into the light with steady grace. It wasn't about forgetting the pain, but about using it as a fuel to grow stronger. One afternoon, as she worked with a group of young women at the community center, helping them design a small garden of their own, she realized how far she'd come. These women, many of them carrying their own burdens, looked to her not just for guidance, but for hope. "You inspire me," one of them said quietly. "You show us that it's possible to rebuild." Elise smiled, her heart full. "We all have the power to rebuild," she said softly. "It just takes courage to start." But courage is not a constant companion. There were days when doubt crept back, when the weight of old scars threatened to pull her under. Those were the moments when she returned to her sketchbook, letting the lines and shapes carry her through the darkness. Julian remained a steady presence, a quiet reminder that support could come from unexpected places. He never asked for more than she was willing to give. In his company, Elise learned that trust was not a weakness, but a bridge. One evening, under a sky full of stars, Julian shared a story from his own life, how he had lost everything in a failed business and had to start from scratch. "I learned that failure is not the end," he said. "It's the moment before growth." Elise listened, feeling a kinship she hadn't expected. His story echoed her own. Two lives intertwined by the shared experience of rising from the ashes. As her confidence grew, Elise began to dream bigger. She planned a project that would bring her full circle a center for women who had faced hardships. A place where creativity and healing could live side by side. She imagined laughter filling the halls, colors brightening the walls, and stories like hers weaving together to form a tapestry of resilience. The day she shared her vision with Julian, he smiled, eyes shining with pride. "You're not just rebuilding a space," he said. "You're building a future, yours and theirs." In those moments, Elise understood the true meaning of strength. It wasn't about perfection or never falling. It was about rising every time life knocked her down. Her story was no longer about loss or betrayal. It was about hope, renewal, and the unbreakable human spirit. And in this new chapter, Elise wasn't just a survivor, she was a creator, a leader, and a beacon for anyone who had ever felt lost in the dark.